I just started my show. That's all.
Had a little thing there. So Das Spook said he didn't get the link last time, but that you got the invite. So I don't know about that. The link is always, if you go to the YouTube video, it should be in the description. So I can also try to okay. All right, so I had some things in mind I was going to talk about. So one thing was that a couple times in Nadia's room, I've gotten a weird situation that's new to me, and I've been online since I was 13 back in the 80s. So new to me is, I think, fairly rare in terms of running into certain things. But what it is this. Okay, when I started this channel, I didn't want to share any private information. I didn't even really want people to know like where I was on Earth. And but I didn't want to not make videos outside in various places, and it was kind of obvious. So I did that, and sure enough, people say, you look like you're in Hawaii or whatever. And so that's fine. Well, after 4 or 5 years of doing a lot of philosophy conversation, I got in a situation where I thought, you know what? I think it's relevant that I have a philosophy degree. And I don't want to mention it because people misinterpret and think you're trying to add that you're correct to your arguments because of this. And of course, I don't believe that. It's silly to think that because, when I went to college, I didn't agree with all of my fellow students. I didn't agree with all my professors. I didn't agree, I don't think, with any of the graduate students I had interactions with. So we all disagree. So why would me having that degree mean other people can disagree somehow? Like, well, some people could disagree with me, and I know people that have your exact opinion, but they're educated in a certain way that they make that argument, and that's okay. That would be stupid. On the other hand, it can be relevant. In the case of my channel, it became relevant because I do not hold the mainstream philosophical beliefs. I'm from a counterculture tradition instead, and so I would tell people how traditional logic works, and then I would describe the mistakes in that system. And people weren't even believing me on the first step about how I make an argument against some traditional interpretations of cognitive issues of how we think, and people were getting really confused because I'm telling how logic works, and they disagreed with me, but thinking that I'm proposing that it works that way, that's the way it should work. I'm really arguing against that. It's like a two-layer thing, and so it has to be like, well, look, I went and got this degree where they told me about how classical logic works and how that historically and currently people view the ways they have of looking at these things. And I see a subculture that looked at them differently, and I'm siding with this subculture. And the reason that I do that it seems normal to me, is because I was taught what the thing is that I disagree with. So, and by the way, having mentioned that, that's what I think people should be doing out there a lot more, is trying to understand the things they disagree with them fully. Like right now, I'm following this flat Earth stuff, and I'm trying to, the Earth is obviously spherical. I can confirm this for myself many, many ways, and have. So I'm still interested in figuring out how their theory works. At that point, it becomes about the psychology of epistemology. How can you reject the evidence that proves you're wrong and feel justified doing that? Okay, so that the subject of why that's interesting is not cosmology. It's not, the mechanics of the solar system, because it's not good at that. That's theory. But it is a theory about how you can believe what you want to believe, and why would you, and what do you have to ignore, and would you ignore it in order to keep believing the thing. It's philosophically relates to the role of doubt. And of course, skepticism is famous for being doubtful about things, but it really means to think and question and ponder things. Skepticism is the philosophy of thinking there's always something more to learn on a subject, no matter how much you think you know. We don't, as a tradition, skepticism does not advocate maximizing doubtfulness. It's not about that. Traditional skepticism, like Pyrrho of Elis, Pyrrhonism, is big part of it. The main part of it is you assent to what appears to be the case at the moment. You just don't assume that you're correct just because it appears to be the case. So it's kind of like, you be honest about what appears to be the case. Don't be ignorant, be honest, investigate, continue to ponder. But at any given moment, you got to go with what appears to be the case. All right. So then in Nadi's room, twice, people tried to dismiss what I was saying by telling me I just didn't understand philosophy and I need to go read more, whatnot. And so I just found myself blurting out, well, no, we can all disagree, but it's not that I don't know these issues. I'm informed on these issues, and I happen to have chosen a different perspective. And it's like, people don't understand that. So many people are like, well, no, if you understood what I was saying, then you'd agree with me. They can't imagine I could understand what they're thinking, what they're saying, and disagree with them. But that's how the real world is more than one way, more than one interpretation. And insofar as we get at the edge of knowledge where things have not been tested, we have to come up with these interpretations in order to test them, right? And so for long periods of time, there will be multiple competing ways of looking at something with only a certain amount of tests to discriminate. Eventually, if you get to a point to discriminate and eliminate one, like that the Earth is flat, and well, it's more spherical than it's flat. Of course, as you go on, you go, well, it's not spherical either. It's actually ellipsoidal, and it's not a perfect ellipsoid, and so on and so forth. Right? It gets more and more refined. You get to a point of certain aspects that it's more spherical than it is flat, becomes known. But you're not really done. It's not exactly spherical, and so on. So there's always more knowledge. And the competing theories at the edge of knowledge will change. They'll become different, but generally they do persist. And the wonderful thing about philosophy is that we have questions of interpreting our experiences and what's going on in the universe that have been open for thousands of years, because that's how deep they go, and to a certain degree how much the confirmation or anti-confirmation of a theory, how difficult that is in certain questions, like in the things that were figured out as fundamental issues, relationship between math and the physical world, for example, what's inside and what's outside, these kinds of questions that are identified, and they're still with us. And that's actually a good thing. So the two topics were, one, the first one was the guy had said, he was talking to a theist, I think it might have been Nephilim Free actually, and he said philosophers don't believe in God, not many of them anymore. And I chimed in going, well, yeah, because basically of the reason I say, which is because of, I think it's called ichtheism, where basically you have to define God. To know if there's a God, you're going to have to define it. Because if you're, North Korean and you say Kim Jong-il is God, well, Kim Jong-il does exist. And so, yeah, God in that case exists by that definition. Does he ever have to go to the bathroom? And all these other fantastical claims is where the claim would fall. And if you give me any definition for your God, it will not take more than like a Tootsie Pop roll, like take 3 licks to get to the center. So I told him this is what analytic philosophy has basically come to, is that as they dug into definitions of God, none stood up, and people stopped coming up with them because it was pretty clear that it's in terms of analytic philosophy, it's an incoherent concept. That doesn't mean it's not important or you can still believe in God. They've come to the same conclusion about concepts like love and courage and honor. They used to look into those things about, philosophy of character, and what was so great about courage and why is it good and this kind of thing. And those all fell apart too. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be courageous. It's just like physicists thinking some things were out of their domain. Analytic philosophers there is no good definition of God with which to do proper analytic philosophy. And this guy said I was wrong and an idiot and just need to read more and was uneducated in philosophy. And he actually said, well, the fact that the philosophers don't believe in God shows they do think there is a good definition for it, because that's what they must be rejecting. But I'm like, dude, save your breath. Give me the definition. Don't tell me you've deduced other people know this definition. There is no good definition for God. You can check. Nobody has one. Yeah, I have been asking for years. Nobody has one. People don't even want to try. And if they do delve into it by some route, what you generally find is that God spoke to them, a voice in their head. Basically, their own subconscious spoke to them in a comforting way, in a positive way, and or they felt a feeling. It's that personal revelation for most Christians that is what their belief in God really is. It's a belief in a feeling they have, that it's a good feeling. And then the other time was just a couple days ago, and what was that? Oh yeah, a priori. I don't believe in any a priori. And there were a couple goofballs, and then they were laughing, and like they were talking to a young Earth creation or someone, just such ludicrous ideas, and they were telling me I didn't understand a priori. And again, I'm like, well, I'm just telling you my understanding from when I got my degree. I don't know what you mean by it, but. And then I went to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and they were like, oh, look, he knows. And the very first line of it went with my definition. Boom, that bounced off. They couldn't handle that. And then the guys were trying to ask me, where's Moses Hall and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And what's material implication versus strategy? Like I was going to answer a bunch of things. It's like, dude, I don't care if you think I got a degree in philosophy or not. It came up because, yeah, and now I'm like, I'm over, like, I'm not saying I'm right because I got a philosophy degree in my final opinions. However, I do say I'm right about the history of philosophy and sort of what mainstream opinions are and certain things from my experiences, because I've had experiences in my life. I get to use those, right? At what point does treating everybody with free speech and the right to have an opinion and being interested in that, and I want to hear it, at what point does that mean I can't have my own experiences, right, or my own expertise? It's also funny because I'm a programmer, so I had never ever run into having a philosophy degree being like trying to prop yourself up. I mean, I've had to do the opposite in my career of explain how it's not totally useless, because logic, it was good that I learned logic. But basically, my career is entirely off of working my way through college as a programmer and getting a resume. Nobody respects in my area a philosophy degree. So the idea that I would be lying about having it is itself kind of funny. And then the guy questioning me about, he thought he would question me about, different kinds of implication and stuff. It's like, dude, do you have a philosophy? No, I have a psychology degree, but I minored in philosophy. It's like, well, then if I answer your question to your satisfaction at best, that would prove I had a minor in it. And second best, if you get it wrong, you're going to say, I don't even have a minor, and it's because you have a minor in it. So it's like, and why would I, if I did want to prove that, I just bring my diploma. But you see, if I did that, it would have my name on it, so I could block the name. And then people go, oh, it's not really yours or something. So I show you the name and show you my LinkedIn or whatever, and then you could see my face and I don't know, and get it all together, right? And you could still say, well, I faked it and printed my name on it. And on and on and on and on and on. What am I supposed to? I'm gonna let you get my transcript or something. So that goes nowhere. And what do I get out of it? Because I'm not even trying to claim I'm right because of this. I'm trying to claim, don't dismiss me like somebody that has a philosophy degree might dismiss you just because you think I don't understand. And when in reality, you're just reading what you want to from Philosophy Today or whatever. And maybe you're keeping up with some club of philosophy. And also I think that the reason these people tend to think that, because they're very philosophical sorts, they like to have some pretty hardcore philosophy discussions in Nadia's room. So they're into that. And I don't strike them as a philosophy student because probably their buddies that do have philosophy degrees were mainstreamers, and they believed all this stuff, about how even without God, we can have a priori, and the word metaphysics isn't total bullshit. It has a modern meaning. It made it through into the postmodern era where, fine, but those guys that had if I was discussing with those guys that had the thing, they might tell you that mainstream stuff simplified for you, assuming that the mainstream is correct. But if I talk to them, I would get them to admit they know there's plenty of philosophers, little known ones like Nietzsche, that don't believe in metaphysics and a priori, right? And right now, this whole idea, because we got in an argument because I was saying everything comes from experience. If you include, evolutionary experience of, your ancestors, you obviously start with, for example, we start with a brain that knows how to learn human language. So we're starting from that, but where did that brain come from? Was the experiences all throughout evolution, calling out anything that didn't have an experience where it built this machine that helps it survive, right? So that counts all as experience. And these people are goofing on that, and you don't even have a degree to believe that. It's like, hello, Mark Johnson and George Lakoff wrote Philosophy in the Flesh. It's Berkeley professors there. So some academics are on my side of this and have been for thousands of years. It's a tradition. It's winning out. It's just like skepticism. It's thousands of years old. Took its time, but in the long run, the rationality of it is winning out. Its epistemology is basically taking over. People haven't bothered to learn it yet, but it's having a huge impact, and it's obviously on the way in. I don't know how many centuries it'll take to finish, but it's certainly gotten stronger in the last 400 years, and you can trace it really as far back as you want, right? I like to trace it to Pyrrho, which is what, 300, 400 BC, something like that. So, they just show that they aren't educated, because to be educated in something, you should know what the people on the other side, that they exist, and what their argument is well enough to say it, write it down, and they would look at it and go, yeah, that's pretty good. That's a statement of my position by somebody who didn't actually believe it, but put it well enough. That's how well you should understand it. And I think it's funny, and I feel I need to change my attitude about the degree. I think maybe it is relevant. I'm not going to change the part that doesn't make me right. I disagreed with the majority of, like I said, the grad students and stuff. But people that are out there don't even have a degree or an education in philosophy telling other people that, well, you're just wrong, you need to read more. That's a great conversation. Well, then discuss something at a conceptual level where, break it down to something else, because that's ridiculous that you're going to tell me because you've read this or that you feel educated enough to try to shut other people down. And anyway, I forget what the other thing I was going to talk about is. Did I ever save that? Yeah, that's saved. Okay. All right, so what was the other thing I didn't write down on a card? Maybe I put it in my... Oh yeah, education, ignorance. Yeah. Okay. Also, was just before this hangout, in Nadia's hangout, and there was a flat earther in there. And it's kind of interesting, because I think with the flat earth, it comes down to, what are your personal experiences that you are ignoring? Because you have to ignore some people. They're acting like, well, I could just be lied to by NASA. I don't have to believe that. And so I was trying to draw them through, like, well, which experiences? Because I think it breaks down to this, that the sun goes below the horizon, and you can make phone calls around the world and find out where the sun is up or not. And if the sun was a flashlight just going off and getting out of range, going around the earth all the time, moving the light to different parts of the earth, then it wouldn't go below a horizon. It would just fade away, right? And so to go below the horizon, it would have to go below the disk. And if you call people, you can find out that the light does not switch appropriately for that. And plus, how do you get to the other side of the disk? Because it's supposedly, we're on the top, and it's ringed by, by Antarctica, basically, is actually a ring of mountains around us. And so if you've seen the sunset and you have access to a phone, then you can do a lot right there, let alone the fact that, obviously, like, I've been working with some satellite data, and when you get it, it's a picture taken back picture. And even though it's pretty much straight down, no, it scans around, and that angle is significant. And the distortion of the picture is exactly that of something on a sphere. And I have to go through all the math myself to know that that's the projection that I'm projecting off into a flat space from, in order to make the pixels all the same size and hook into the quarter acre or whatever that they're supposed to be. Now, I know most of us all believe that. Why would I even argue that? Well, because I find this interesting about ignorance as ignoring facts, which is what I think ignorance really means. It is about, so when you ignore facts and kind of, stupid on purpose, you're ignoring things eminently available to you, not just that you happen not to know it. And that this subject gets into the psychological aspects of doubt, the psychological value or purpose feeling, the benefit people get from having the freedom to doubt, and you can't tell me what to think. And in other words, it gets into the psychology of epistemology. So the psychology of the fact that we in philosophy, we like to discuss epistemology analytically. what gives you justified knowledge, and can knowledge be truly justified and whatnot. And as we mostly know from, mammalian psychology, obviously, the animals, including humans, are mostly doing a kind of epistemology that's based on the psychological result. They believe things that make them feel better about the situation it puts them in the world. And I think the flat Earth is basically not about the Earth being flat so much as it's a geocentrism. It's about geocentric theory. Right? So, and then, yeah, that was it. That was the other thing. And then I put up here what is the state of states, just to raise. I didn't figure I'd go into that, but it's just because the words a state, S-T-A-T-E, is a powerful and interesting word. We use it for many different things. And so what is the state of states? Right? And how many different things can that question mean, actually? But I mean the analytic one. What is the state of states? Okay. I'm going to take my post monologue break for about 5 minutes, and I'll be honest, I'm going to smoke a cigarette, and then I will be back. And if anybody wants to come up and be conversational guests, you are invited and welcome. And I have put the link in the description of the video, and I will check that that's there. You are invited and welcome. I do not see it. So we'll try this part again, and it will go over here also and do this thing. All right. So why did that not work? Let's just try this again. Because I know it said saved. Oh, it's in there. Oh, it's saved, but when I reloaded it, it didn't show up. Let's try that again. It was in there. There's this. Hard reload. When you go to YouTube, every time you hit YouTube, you're actually going to different computers, and they don't catch up with each other. Yeah, to join. There we go. It says to join both things. So if there was a way to send that to the same groups, then I just don't know about that, but there probably is. All right, so here's one thing I could add. I could add this. So this is for anybody watching this, you would already have. No, I think the thing is sometimes people get the invite through Google Plus, so they don't necessarily see the YouTube part of it. So they don't see the description in YouTube that has the link, possibly. So this I would consider a pain to type this, but let's do this as though it was a matter of completeness. Holy shit, too big. Is there no way to change the freaking size of the? Really? Really, there's no way to change the size. Anyway. Okay, this is not really helpful. Okay, so I'll be back in a minute. Oh, wait, somebody showed up. Oh, Gabaloft. I'm going to go smoke a cigarette and come back. Okay, yeah, he left anyway. Okay. Now this is the part of the show where I demand people come in, or for the conversation part, or it's just the monologue. It's just my weekly video. Either way is fine. Sometimes I've not successfully posted the link, so people couldn't come in. I was very disappointed, and then I found that out. I'm like, all right, I guess I can't blame them. I will test my link because of this past experience. It works. And then I will even do this thing over in Google Plus, which I hate this thing. Just click hell, and they've got a new worse interface coming. I have no idea. Every time they change the fucking interface, I can't do things anymore. I don't want to do that. Let's see. So what am I missing here? Maybe if I check if anybody comes in, because this is fascinating stuff, huh, you guys? Okay, live control room here. Why didn't you get this all organized ahead of time? I did, and now I'm just double checking. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay. All looks fine to me. Now, there's probably a way to invite more people, supposedly over here, but they're already invited. Why do that? Invite people. So, yeah, I don't really feel like opining anymore. So I'm going to go, and for conversation, I might just go to Nadia's room. Because since Nadia does it every day, apparently something like 12 hours a day, that room's open. Nadia sometimes opens it when she doesn't have time to interact herself, or is asleep or something, leaves it open. So it's a reliable place. People that like conversation know that it's around, whether you're there every time or not. And she deserves some credit for that. All right, so over and out for me for now. And I'll see you guys later.